We know that when we are underslept, even just like for one day, your cortisol spikes up in the morning. Your hunger hormones are going to spike up. It will preferentially make you crave high sugar, high fat foods. Fiber is the unsung hero. We're talking all the time about Ozempic and the GLP-1 hormone. Protein releases GLP-1.
What should they consider in terms of stabilizing their blood sugar?
What I think is really important to know is that
Abbey, thank you so much for being here. An amazing return guest. The first episode we did with you was one of our most popular episodes.
I love that.
And really helped me so much with just balanced, realistic, not fear-mongering, actual nutrition advice. So thank you so much for what you do.
Well, thank you so much for having me again. I'm very excited to chat.
Okay, well, I would love to start by talking about the internet's obsession right now, which is protein. We see it everywhere. I'm into it, but I want to know if you could set the record straight on what the actual protein amounts are that we should be having and why it's important. And are we overdoing it, or is this a realistic piece of advice?
Yeah. So what I think is really important to know is that if you want to meet your like base nutrition needs for protein, the vast majority, like basically everyone, unless you are on some very fringe diet, you're meeting it, right? You're meeting it. 10% of your calories from protein kind of thing. You're there, even if you're not like a protein eater and you like love your carbs or whatever, highly unlikely you're deficient in protein.
Okay.
That said, we know there's so many benefits of focusing more on protein in our meals and snacks, especially for us women. Yeah. So for one, it's incredibly satiating. So I always call it the king of the satiety hierarchy. So it helps to release satiety hormones. Like we're talking all the time about Ozempic and the GLP-1 hormone. Protein releases GLP-1 in the gut, as well as like other satiety hormones that make us feel fuller longer. It's slow digesting. So that also helps with blood sugar balance, because if you are, consuming a meal with some pasta, if you add some protein to that, it's going to help to flatten the blood sugar curve. So very important there. Also, obviously, muscle mass and maintaining muscle growth. And it's very important for folks with weight loss goals, because as you go into a calorie deficit, you do risk losing some muscle mass.
Right.
And we don't want to lose muscle mass because it's metabolically active, tissue. And that's what's going to help to sustain our metabolism long term, so we don't just rapidly gain that weight back.
Right.
So really, anytime you are in a deficit, you do want to be more cognizant, a lot more mindful about including protein at those meals and snacks. Same with folks with insulin resistance.
Right.
So I would say, and again, everyone's going to be different in terms of what they need to be going for in their diet. There's huge variability here between people, between days, depending on what you're doing activity-wise. For your average population, I would say aiming for between 15 at the very lowest to 25% of your calories coming from protein. And then for folks who are on a weight loss journey in a deficit, upping that to about 25 to 30% of calories from protein. That is what we've seen to be protective of that muscle as we are kind of in that deficit losing weight.
Okay, that's good to know. So the 30%, when I'm seeing that online, that's 30%. Not ridiculous.
It's actually
then.
Not ridiculous. Okay. It's not. And it's not as hard as it needs to be to meet that. Obviously it depends on your total energy intake and your goals, but that could just mean like having 25 grams, which is like a chicken breast, or, a cup of Greek yogurt with some, nuts and fruit for in the morning.
Yeah.
Really just a couple of these doses, as I call them, throughout the day.
Yeah.
At 25, you're at 100 grams there.
Yeah.
So
we don't need to be on a carnivore diet.
You don't need to be on a carnivore diet to be meeting those numbers. And you'd probably be surprised if you were to do a deep dive that there is protein in a lot of the foods that we are consuming, even if it doesn't seem like, oh, that's like a high protein food.
Yeah.
So all these things
still there in the
add
background.
Up. Yeah.
That's what I tell myself every time I eat a block of cheese.
Oh yeah.
There's protein.
Tons of
minimum protein goals.
Parmesan is like really high in protein.
Nice.
I mean,
great.
You might like really, it's a lot of salt if you're going to meet your protein needs in Parmesan cheese, and very expensive.
In this economy,
delicious.
Yeah.
In this economy, not going to happen. But yes, it absolutely can be done.
Amazing. Okay. And then let's talk about fiber. Historically, I have not gotten enough fiber in my diet. I just struggle with it. And then I also went down like a whole rabbit hole of trying to manage my PCOS and not having enough carbs, because carbs are such an important source of fiber. So I'd love to hear more about how much fiber we need and what role does fiber play in our satiety and in our gut health, in all of it.
Yeah. Fiber is the unsung hero. Unfortunately, like you said, you're not alone. Most North Americans, I think it's only like less than 10% are actually meeting their fiber minimum needs. And that's like 25 to 38 grams of fiber per day, just depending on your body size, male, female, other factors. But that is like, I mean, in my books, like that's like a C plus. Like those minimums, even though we're struggling to meet those, that's not necessarily optimal for a lot of people.
Right.
Especially if you have PCOS, if you have, insulin resistance, if you are trying to lose weight, all of those kinds of things. If you are, experiencing other symptoms like IBS, things like that. So there's a lot of huge benefits to fiber. One, not unlike protein, it's super satiating.
Yeah.
Right? It's also going to come bound up with water, with volume. So typically high fiber foods are low calorie density foods. So,
Right.
You get your big satiety bang for a small caloric buck is what I say. So fantastic for weight loss, really important for blood sugar management, PCOS, insulin resistance, prediabetes, diabetes, because it helps to slow the digestion of those carbohydrates. So you're not getting that spike and then that dip. And you're going to get a nice kind of leveled off arc with your blood sugar curve. But then very important for gut health. So obviously we know fiber is going to help with regularity.
Yeah.
Nobody likes to be constipated.
Yeah.
And so that's very important for bloating, all of those kind of IBS-like symptoms. Fiber is key. But then I would say that what people don't often realize is that gut health and good digestion is not just about poops, right? The gut is implicated in the health of every other body system, right? So we know that the gut is important for our blood sugar management, hormones, our body weight, our skin, our nails, our hair. It's important for our immune system. 70% of our immune system is housed in our gut.
Wow.
And 90 to 95% of our serotonin is produced in the gut. So huge brain to like mind to gut connection there. So when the gut is in a state of, dysbiosis, it's not doing well, we're going to feel it and we're going to see it all over our body.
Yeah.
So fiber is amazing because fiber is the fuel. It is the feast for our gut microbes. So we often hear about the terms probiotics, which is the good gut bacteria. Then we hear prebiotics, which is the fuel or the food for the probiotics. And fiber is that fuel. It is prebiotic.
Okay.
So it means that we can't necessarily harvest like calories or energy from those foods, but our gut microbes can.
Right.
So that's where that comes into play. If we want to have a vibrant and healthy and diverse gut microbiome, we got to be feeding them, and they want fiber.
I wonder if that's why I've had such a shit immune system throughout my life, because it wasn't having enough fiber.
Well,
I used to get sick all the time, and then it'd be an endless cycle because then I'd be on antibiotics.
Right.
And then that just wreaks
ruins your gut.
havoc on your gut health. And then when I started paying attention, I noticed how much my mental health would dip after antibiotics. And I wasn't aware of that before, but I think 1 or 2 years ago, I just had like a bunch of UTIs in a row, a bunch of antibiotics. And I was so depressed.
Yeah.
And I was like, I think my gut's fucked. Like, this is bad.
100%. I've experienced it myself so rapidly. I had SIBO, which is a small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. It is basically an overgrowth of bacteria, good and potentially bad. And I had to be treated with very heavy duty antibiotics. And my goodness, I was so depressed. I called my psychiatrist. I was like, I need more drugs. Fix me.
Yeah.
And then as soon as I got off the antibiotics, I was like, I don't need more drugs. I hadn't started them yet, but I was just like, I had a prescription I didn't need.
Yeah.
Because my gut was in such a state of dysbiosis and just being wiped out from those drugs. Obviously, I want to preface that antibiotics are life-saving.
Oh my God, 100%.
We don't want to this is not like anti-antibiotics.
No.
We
But there's things we could do
Of course,
also. I mean, we're not for sepsis. Like we need antibiotics.
Yes, we need antibiotics,
yeah.
but we still need to take care of our gut.
Yeah. So, okay. So then if you are knowing that you're going into a round of antibiotics, would you like suggest upping or like looking into a pre and probiotic, like upping your fiber intake, just really being more mindful of your gut?
Yes. And so probiotics can definitely help. There are specific strains that are indicated for when you are on an antibiotic. I also love S. boulardii, which is it's a probiotic kind of yeast. It's not a bacteria, but it's a yeast that doesn't get wiped out by the antibiotics. So that can kind of give you some buffer, some kind of support. So you're not getting all those symptoms of being on the antibiotics, the nausea, the kind of stomach upset and all those kinds of things as you're going through it. And then for sure, once you get off, you've got to make sure you're on a good regimen. So work with a dietitian or doctor on what's best for you, just based on the timing of your course. But yes, absolutely, we got to kind of rebuild after that period.
This is so good to know. I'm going to listen back to this when it comes to sickness season.
Oh yeah, it's always here. Apparently,
it's always on. It's 24/7, 365. Yeah. That's so funny. I would also love to learn more about our metabolism, because I see a lot of metabolism hacks online, and I've watched some of your videos that really debunk them, and it's just so helpful to cut through the noise and cut through the bullshit. But I've also seen that there are a few things that can improve our metabolism. Yeah. So where should we get started?
So we'll talk about the things that maybe aren't super helpful. Okay, so on paper, or at least if you were to like look it up in the research and the data, whether we're talking about HIIT training or drinking coffee or green tea extract or cold showers or spicy foods or whatever, those will boost your metabolism.
Yeah.
It will kind of give you a bit of a boost in energy expenditure.
Right.
However, that is going to only last a very small, finite amount of time. And it's only like a couple percentage boost, essentially, for each of these things. So in the end, you could be having a 10-minute cold shower and maybe you've burned the equivalent of like a couple blueberries.
When I saw that in your video, I was like, why am I doing this?
Yes. Like for spicy peppers, like capsaicin, which of course is like the compound that is in jalapenos that give it that heat. Like you would consume more calories just eating the peppers than you would burn from the boost in metabolism from the spice. So, if you like cold showers, cool, any of those things, great, but they're not like going to make a difference on the scale.
Yeah.
The thing that does, for the most part, make a difference is muscle mass.
Right.
Because muscle burns 3 times as many calories at rest compared to fat. So this kind of comes back to our early conversation about protein and why that's so important, because we don't want to lose muscle. It's hard to gain that back. I mean, for me, I'm a woman. I work friggin' hard, and it's like, it is a slog to gain muscle back.
Especially as we age. It's it just gets harder and harder.
Unfortunately, yes, our hormones are working against us on that. But if we were to work really hard in the gym and put on 10 pounds of muscle, we are going to see a significant boost in our resting metabolic rate. So just doing nothing, lazing around, now that we've got more muscle, it is working harder for us. That's what metabolism is. Metabolism is just basically the energy cost of all of our organs doing their job. And so when we're just at rest, it's going to boost our metabolism. But most of us are not just like sitting around doing nothing. Now, every activity that you do, whether it's actual like physical activity, like lifting weights or whatever, or you're just like moving about your day, all of those activities, they cost more energy or calories or burn.
Yeah.
So that is, again, what metabolism is really all about. You're going to burn more calories doing everything in your day when you have more muscle on board. And so obviously that's going to require, resistant training, progressive load for that, and diet, making sure you're getting your protein, you're meeting your protein needs. And again, making sure you're not in too high of a calorie deficit.
Right.
Because that, again, we will start to dig into our muscle stores.
Yeah. I love this approach to working out as well. That's not based on like, I just know in my teens and early 20s, it was like, how many calories am I burning in this workout? Which when you look at it, usually doesn't actually offset that much.
It doesn't.
Approaching it from this it feels more abundant to be like, how am I building? How am I adding healthily to my body through muscle?
Absolutely.
And that's like, the lasting effects are so much greater than like just trying to chase calories.
Yeah. And unfortunately, I hate to break it to everybody, but exercise, as amazing as it is for health, also for muscle burning, it's not a great weight loss strategy. It actually doesn't move the needle very much when it comes to weight loss.
Yeah.
There's just so many compensatory mechanisms that happen in the body, whether, our body becomes more efficient and, or we, become more hungry and therefore we eat more. So really, if weight loss is the goal, we shouldn't be worried about how many calories it says on the treadmill that we burn.
Yeah.
We should really be focusing more on, our diet and making sure that we are getting, that muscle, the muscle piece as well, making sure that we are trying to support healthy muscle growth.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah. I love now at this age in my mid 30s, like every time I go to a workout or I go to Legree, I go to anything, I'm like focusing on how my muscles feel.
Yes.
And I'm like literally visualizing. I'm like, I want to build my butt. I'm sick of trying to make myself smaller. I'm so sick of it. I'm excited to see like gains in a in a healthy way.
Yes.
But, like, it just feels more exciting to me at this point in my life to like, how can I like add more good things to my body
I
instead
love
of
that.
always trying to take away.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's my approach to really everything when it comes to diet and lifestyle. What can we add rather than taking things away?
Yeah. It's an amazing shift.
Yeah.
I love it. Wish I had it in my 20s, but here we are.
Hey, never too late.
Never too late. Exactly. I'm also curious if it matters when we eat our biggest meal of the day and kind of like how we structure the ways that we eat. So there's like a few different things, whether we should be having big meals earlier in the day, if it matters if they're later, and then if it matters if we're snacking throughout the day. And I'd say approaching this through the lens of metabolism and also weight loss goals.
Right, right. So I don't know about you, but I grew up where the messaging was always like, oh, you got to like keep the log on the fire. So you're burning, you got to eat every hour. So you're not letting that fire, fizzle out or whatever.
Yeah.
So that was the mentality back then, that we had to like have these like mini snacks, like every hour on the hour.
Yeah.
We know by looking at the data, there's no difference in metabolism, resting metabolism, between having like multiple small meals in the day versus like 3 straight meals.
Right.
No difference. And also it matters so much more, the total number of calories when we're talking about weight loss, total number of calories that you've consumed in the day versus when in the day you've consumed them.
Got it. Okay.
That said, there is a slight metabolic benefit of front loading our calories earlier on in the day. So basically, just because of the way our circadian rhythm is naturally, we are more insulin sensitive in the morning versus later on in the evening. So this is particularly important for folks who are pre-diabetic, diabetes, insulin resistance, PCOS. It actually is advantageous to try to shift our calorie intake to earlier on in the day. And it's really interesting because, intermittent fasting has become so popular in the last 10 years, but the vast majority of people doing intermittent fasting are doing the opposite. They're skipping breakfast.
Yeah.
They're, not eating till 12 or 1 p.m. And then they're eating later into the night.
That's me.
But all the data says the actual benefit occurs when you do the opposite. But obviously it's like not very convenient for anybody to skip dinner because like, you could just run out the door, I guess, and like, grab a black coffee and be okay, I guess, for some people. But to like sit and like twiddle your thumbs while everybody has dinner.
Yeah,
like,
it's so culturally ingrained to like
course.
gather and have a big dinner. It's stupid. We need to shift this to breakfast.
We
breakfast.
do. Yeah, breakfast. Everyone's got to get together for breakfast early in the morning. I know. I love that. I think that should be a thing. I mean, I'm a morning person, so I'd be down for that. But so that is really where the benefit lies. But again, if it doesn't work for you, I wouldn't be overly stressed over it. The idea is just not to fear breakfast and to, try if possible, especially if you are struggling with blood sugars, to just try to shift the evening meal up a little bit. Also a little bit better for digestion before sleep.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, we're so active throughout our days that it is strange societally that we do these heavy meals before bed.
You're like, let me get all the fuel so I can just
go to sleep. Yeah, it's so strange.
Yeah. I know. I'm sure our caveman ancestors are like, what are they doing?
What's wrong with these people?
You don't need any energy when you're just laying. I mean,
you're like, why? Oh, corporate capitalism. That's why.
Yeah.
Get to the office.
Exactly.
But here we are. In terms of sleep, so we've talked about eating before bed. That's good to know. In general, sleep hygiene, sleep health, does it affect our satiety? Does it affect how hungry we are? And does it affect how we approach weight loss?
Yes. Sleep is so underrated. Unfortunately, we have been living in this, like you just mentioned it, like this hustle culture, right? We're always supposed to be showing up like these 4 a.m. morning routines where we're like, you like 20-step
Oh my God.
skincare routine and like go to the gym for 5 a.m. And then like you've done your meditation, you've done your journaling, you've done your, whatever.
Yeah, but you haven't slept.
You haven't slept. Okay. You missed the important point.
Yeah.
Sleep is so important. We know that when we are underslept, even just like for one day, I'm sure I definitely experience this. First of all, your cortisol spikes up in the morning. Your hunger hormones are going to spike up. And cortisol is funny because it will preferentially make you crave high sugar, high fat foods, because we know that those foods are the best way to bring cortisol levels down, like stress down.
Yeah.
So you're going to just crave less nutritious foods throughout the day, and you're going to be more hungry for them.
So this is real.
This is real.
Because I've always been like, oh, it's just this like comforting thing that we do when we're feeling depleted. But this is science.
This is science. This is hormones. This is happening. And then obviously, like, you're probably less likely to want to go like do a hard boot camp class if you haven't slept, right? Yeah. So it is very well documented that folks who sleep like less than 5 hours are significantly at greater risk of obesity than those who are sleeping, your 7 to 8 hours. So it's so important to be doing your best to get that sleep, that those 7 to 8 to even 9 hours for some women need more. Women need more sleep.
Just saying,
women need more sleep. Yeah, like 20 minutes more. I don't know. I'm going to say it's like
I think it's an hour. I think it's an hour.
An hour and a half.
Yeah. And I mean, depending on like the time of month and your cycle, like even more at some points.
100%. Yeah. And so we need better quality sleep. So we definitely want to be powering down our electronics before bed, cold, dark room, which, I mean, we've been in a heat wave, so it's been hard, but you got to really like make that a priority, and find some kind of relaxing activities before bed, whether that's meditation, reading a book, reading a trashy magazine. That used to be my go-to, bath, whatever it might be.
Yeah. An Epsom salt bath. Yes. I am literally a slug afterwards. Yes. It's like I drag myself into bed. It's great.
Yes. Yes. And like in the summer, I actually have insomnia. So I've learned many tricks over the years. In the summertime, when it's like still bright out, but you're like, I got to go to bed because I have to get up for work in the morning. Yeah. Put your sunglasses on in the house. Whoa. It like tricks your brain a little bit into thinking, oh yeah, it's getting dark. And then like things start to kind of slow down a little bit. Yeah. It really does help.
I do find like shades also are worth the investment because the minute a room is bright, I can't sleep.
No. Or you're going to wake up at the crack of dawn because like the moment
the sun is in my retina,
you're like, okay, your brain of course is going to think it's time to get up. Yeah. It's hard. In the summer is hard for sleep.
We both struggle with this. But then also winter is hard for sleep. So it's all very hard.
It is.
It's really, really hard.
Yeah.
Probably the trickiest part of adulting is just doing the thing that we were designed to do every night. Really hard.
Really hard. Like the most hard.
Yeah.
Isn't this just supposed to be natural?
Yeah.
Like, come on.
We're literally supposed to do this.
Like, this is like just like the primal needs of humans, and we suck at it.
We really struggle at it. It's really funny. I would also love to hear about some balanced nutrition hacks to just eat more healthily without like scarcity, without nutrition, and to kind of approach it through an additive lens, but still be able to meet weight loss goals or still be able to eat in a way that feels like really nourishing, but not overdoing it. Are there any like go-to principles or hacks that you recommend for people?
Well, I think like the big overarching thing that, I talk about a lot is this hunger crushing combo. This is a framework that I've trademarked. It's helped so many people. It can be adapted to any goal.
I love it.
The concept is it's an additive approach, like you said. So rather than saying, oh, I can't have candy, I can't have chocolate, I can't have, I'm not allowed to have like ice cream or whatever it is, why don't we just dress up those, what I call naked carbs, with fiber, protein, and healthy fats? Those are the 3 hunger crushing compounds. 1 hunger crushing compound is going to be beneficial, but 2 or 3, you're going to get even more benefits. And so, we talked earlier about the benefits of fiber and protein. These, and also healthy fats, these are very satiating. They provide that satiety factor. So you're going to feel full. And that's obviously very important, especially when it comes to weight loss and sustainable weight loss. So this works because it will naturally edge out some of those less satiating, less nutritious, higher calorie kind of naked carbs, right? So the idea is like you're craving pizza, no problem. How about you have a slice rather than eating like the whole slice of pizza?
Yeah.
Why don't we have a slice of pizza, and on the side you're gonna have a salad with some chickpeas and some veggies and some avocado. So you got your fiber, healthy fats, protein, all the good stuff. And so that is kind of the foundation for a lot of the kind of hacks that I love. But another like specific one that is really helpful, especially for folks who are mindless eaters, is something called the pistachio principle. So this is basically when if you find you get home from like a long day of work and you're just like face planting into the bag of chips, and then you just like look up, you're like, oh my God,
How
they're
did this happen?
gone. Where'd they go?
Yeah.
This one's really helpful because when we have evidence of what we've consumed, we are able to be more mindful because, you know, sometimes we're just kind of like watching a show, you just like zone out, right?
Yeah.
So with pistachios in shell, you have to open each one. So A, it's going to slow you down because you actually have to do some work. But B, you see in front of you,
there's a visual cue.
I ate all these. So it's not like I hadn't had a snack. Like people will say like, I didn't eat anything. And I'm like, I just watched you eat a handful of nuts. That was like 200 calories, right?
We can really go into autopilot.
Full autopilot, especially at the end of the day when we are so tired. So that really does help people as opposed to buying them pre-shelled. Another thing that I love to recommend, and this is, you know, not just for folks with weight loss goals, but really anyone because it's important for health, but do a veggie preload is what I call it. So essentially what, while you're making dinner and everyone's like, I'm hungry, at least my kids say like, Mom, I need a snack. Mom, I'm starving. I put out like a platter of vegetables, like raw veggies or whatever, cooked, doesn't matter. And you can snack on that while you're making dinner. And not only is that going to get you some fiber, you know, get you lots of micronutrients, but it's also going to kind of give you that preload of, you know, filling your body with volume, with fiber, with nutrients, with water, especially when we're talking vegetables, so that when you get to your main pasta meal, you're not going to be as hungry and need to like devour the entire thing. It's like the bread basket, but a better choice, right? Like a more nutritious, like high fiber, diet friendly choice.
It's too bad we always like culturally kind of start with bread because I'm like, I love the bread basket, but now I'm like,
fill up.
Could you give it to me after or during? Because now I'm going to eat this. Or even just like my family, a lot of times when we're entertaining and we're still making dinner and people arrive, we'll like put chips out. And I love it. I'm like, a chip and dip. I love a chip and dip. I'm now mindlessly eating so much chip and dip that we get to dinner. I'm like, I'm not even hungry.
100%. It drives me crazy. My husband's the worst. Like we will go to a fancy restaurant and I will be like so excited to try like all different things. And they'll bring out the bread. He'll eat the entire loaf and then the mains will come. He's like, I'm not hungry. And I'm like, well, I'm going to eat all this myself now? I'm able to kind of be like, no, I've got to hold out for this. And I'll put my bread aside so that like I'm ready to eat it, but I'm going to wait till like I taste the other things I'm paying for. But yes, I wish that I have been to a few restaurants in Europe that do put out veggies as opposed to, which is really cool.
That's really great.
And I think it just should be like standard practice. Anyways. One day when I start a restaurant that don't want to do, it's terrible.
I will invest. I will be there.
All right, perfect. And then what else? So oil. People get into trouble with, you know, big lugs of oil, you know, when they're cooking or they're marinating or whatever it might be. And I'm not saying we don't cook with oil. We should be still cooking with oil. It adds flavor. It helps things cook evenly. You need some kind of oil when you're cooking something in a pan. That said, you know, one of the things I like to recommend is that you put your high quality oil in an oil atomizer. So then you can spray your pan. You get a nice even coating, but you're not getting hundreds of calories of oil with each and every glug. So that has been really helpful for a lot of people to do as well.
I really moved away from like tracking too closely like what I eat and the calories that I consume, and I just don't, it's not healthy for me, so I don't do it. But when I was doing more of that, I never accounted for the oil I was using or just those, like even the oil I was putting on my salad. Those things can really sneak up on you. And I definitely don't want to be at a place where I'm policing stuff like that. But the awareness of like using enough, but not glugging.
but not like more than you need. Basically, you want to get enough to kind of give you the flavor and or the kind of like cooking benefits that you're looking for, without it being like, it shouldn't be all you taste, is what I always kind of say. And when it does come to fats, like obviously fat is more calorie dense than other, protein, carbohydrates, fiber. I recommend the bulk of your fats come from what I call dual citizen fats, which are, under the hunger crushing combo concept. That means they're fats, but they're also either protein or they're fiber. So like avocado, protein and fiber. Avocado is fat and fiber. Salmon would be fat and protein. So we want the bulk of our fats to be coming from these whole food sources that also have other good kind of, hunger crushing compounds mixed in.
Yeah, that makes sense. I love that. That's a great approach. The oil thing also, it reminds me, I just had like a flashback to when I did my first gin tasting, and I growing up would have like, a shot of gin and then just fill a huge glass full of like tonic.
Yeah.
Is, do we need to be doing that?
Yeah.
And so then I went to a proper gin tasting, really, really good quality gin. And they were like, so this is how you build your drink. Like you should be tasting the gin if you enjoy it. So like build it, put the ice in, and then put a splash and then taste it, and then add another splash and then taste it. So you build it to the level that tastes good to you. And I realized like, I only need a quarter of what I'm putting in there. Yeah. And there's so much empty and sugary calories that I'm consuming with all of this tonic. And I'm also like losing the plot of the enjoyment of the drink.
Yeah.
And then when I use like oil and put way too much on there, I'm like, I'm like kind of masking what I'm actually creating, and I don't need that much. And so being like additive and like checking in rather than just like mindlessly putting things together.
Yeah, exactly. I do find that a lot of like restaurant salad dressings, for example, the oil to, vinegar or other kind of, ingredient in their vinaigrettes is so much higher. I feel like that's all I taste. Like I've lost the flavor of all the beautiful vegetables or fruit or nuts or seeds or other ingredients. You want that to shine. You want it to enhance, but not take away. Yeah. And actually, speaking of fat, this one's another one that I think surprised a lot of people. But when it comes to fermented dairy like yogurt and cheese, I actually always suggest going higher fat rather than skim. And I know that, diet culture, we've always been told, oh, you gotta have the fat-free, sugar-free, plain yogurt. Oh, Greek yogurt that's like 0%.
That's not it.
So bad. It's, sorry to yuck someone's yum, but it's like so astringent. It needs so much sugar to taste somewhat decent or palatable. Whereas like a full fat Greek yogurt, like, it is
luxury.
Creamy, it's luxury. Yeah. It tastes almost like dessert. So you're getting the satisfaction factor from the fat. You're getting the satiety from the fat, and you're not having to add the sugar, which is not going to contribute any of those hunger crushing compounds. So I always say go a little higher fat. Actually, it's fantastic for PCOS as well. It's been actually shown higher fat is dairy is better for PCOS.
Interesting. When I was comparing, because I grew up drinking, I love milk. I grew up drinking skim milk. And then when I was looking at higher percentage fat milks, there was less carbs in them. Like there was less sugars. There was. So then I started to make the move, but I was always doubtful of like, but now I'm consuming more calories, but then, the quality of what's going into me is better. So
yeah, that's exactly that. And that's why with PCOS, we do see a benefit to higher fat. You're basically edging out some of the kind of the carbohydrates, and that fat is going to temper the glycemic load from the lactose. So yeah.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense.
It tastes better.
It does. It's so much more satisfying. I loved one of your hacks on how satiety hormones are released more with like sometimes like thicker and kind of more like voluminous, like creamier things. So like a runny smoothie versus a creamy smoothie. Yes. I feel like we have been conditioned to approach like creamy, rich things as bad. And like, if it's super watery and runny, then like it's not as, there's not as many calories and it'll be better. But just making things a bit more creamy and satisfying, like that's a good hack.
It's a great hack. I mean, I always say if food, like healthy food is only healthy if you're going to eat it.
Yeah.
Okay. So like if you're making yourself a meal that is like boiled chicken breast and like steamed broccoli, and you are just like pushing it around, what is the point? You still have to make it taste good.
Yeah.
If you want to sustain that way of eating for like anything more than a week.
Yeah.
So yes, make food taste good to you.
Yeah. On the note of insulin sensitivity and blood sugar management, for anyone who's trying to manage their weight and their hormones right now, what should they consider in terms of stabilizing their blood sugar? Is there a good place to start without becoming like extreme about it?
Of course, yeah. So again, back to kind of the hunger crushing combo and what we were talking about earlier. It is so important that we don't say to folks with insulin, resistance or prediabetes, you don't need to go keto.
Yeah.
You don't need to cut out carbohydrates,
fucked that
especially
up.
if you fuck no, especially if you enjoy them. Like I would say most of us do.
Yeah.
And they give us energy. Like for most people, having some carbs on board feels good.
Yeah.
And so what I always just say is you want to dress them up with the hunger crushing compounds, fat, fiber, and protein. So that might mean like if you have a craving for Lucky Charms cereal, no problem. Instead of having like a big bowl of Lucky Charms with like some skim milk, why don't we do like a big thing of Greek yogurt, throw a handful or two of the Lucky Charms, add a handful of like all brand cereal for some extra fiber, throw some raspberries on there, a handful of nuts. We got protein, we got fiber, we got healthy fats, and we got the fun factor with mini marshmallows.
Yeah. I love
magically
that.
delicious.
Yeah.
So that is really, really important. It's going to help to slow down the blood sugar response significantly when we have those other hunger crushing compounds on board with the carbohydrates. The other thing that, again, doesn't need to be extreme is just movement. We know that exercise is going to help bring down your blood sugar levels. So if you have a big meal with pasta, go for a walk afterwards. It does wonders. Yeah. And then back to the muscle mass as well. When we kind of commit ourselves to trying to build and maintain muscle, the muscle's like a sink to soak up the sugars in the blood. So more muscle cells is going to mean a greater kind of deeper cavern to bring those blood sugars into the muscle cells so that you don't have high blood sugars. So more muscle mass, better insulin sensitivity. So again, it's that long-term game of this is going to be really helpful to my blood sugars. And of course, if your blood sugars are in check, if your insulin sensitivity is in check, if you're not dealing with insulin resistance, you're going to be less at risk of obesity over time as well. So it's all, all these things are so deeply intertwined. And it doesn't have to be complicated. It doesn't need to, all the different pieces don't require all these different strategies. It's actually just kind of one overarching strategy, which is
that's a relief.
Right. Like, it's just, it's balance. Unfortunately, it's not sexy. It's not like, oh, just cut this one food out and everything's going to change. Yeah. It comes down to, how do I focus on just adding in the foods that I know are going to help to support my body long term.
Yeah, I love that. And you can ritualize some of these things to make them like an enjoyable part of life. I mean, I really think part of the reason you can go to Europe and there's like so many carbs and pasta, other than food quality being different, consumed, and everyone is like doing great. It's because they're going for walks after dinner. It's like a part of the culture. And
part of the culture.
I love that. I've tried to implement more movement after meals, and it's nice.
It's so nice. Yeah. It feels good.
It does feel good.
Like, especially when you go for dinner and it's like you've had a big meal. Like my husband and I always will try to like, even if we're, taking an Uber, like let's just like walk a couple blocks and then pick up an Uber down there.
I love that.
Like just so we can feel like we've got a little bit of movement in. It's good for our digestion, especially after a big meal before you sit down. Yeah, it's great.
Amazing. My last question for you that I'm really fascinated by is learning more about the science of retrogradation. I would love to hear more about how it works and what the benefits are of that, because just learning these hacks that can allow us to enjoy the things we love, but in a way that's a little bit better for us, we all need this.
Of course. Yeah. So retrogradation is like this lecture that I had in university a million years ago. I still remember it as being like a mind fuck. Like it was like, whoa.
Yeah.
Food science is so cool.
It's really cool.
It's really, really cool. I mean, it really is. Like I still geek out on it. So retrogradation is essentially anytime you have a carbohydrate containing food, rice, pasta, bread, when you cool down those starch molecules, the starch molecules will basically kind of rearrange themselves into something called resistant starch. And resistant starch is what it sounds like. It's resistant to our digestion. But it's a form of prebiotic fiber. So back to our gut. It's what's going to feed our gut microbiome, the microbes in the gut. So it's actually one of their favorite foods, resistant starch. So what that means is we've basically turned some of the carbohydrates that we would have absorbed as calories into food that we like, fuel that we can't absorb as calories, which is good for our gut health because it's going to feed, preferentially it's going to feed and help with the diversity of the gut microbiome. It's going to actually reduce the glycemic load of that bread, of that pasta. So the glycemic index comes down, the absorbable carbs come down, the absorbable calories will come down, and it doesn't take any work. You're still going to eat the same food, right? Yeah. This is leftovers. You make a big pot of rice, you put it in the fridge, you warm it up the next day.
Yeah.
I do that all the time.
Yeah. And now I just I pre-cut my bread and freeze it, especially I love sourdough. And so I just pre-cut it, freeze it, take out each slice as I want it. And I don't feel better about it.
Oh, yeah. I mean, again, who wants to waste food? And it's just so nice to be able to batch things. Yeah. And bread actually is really interesting because bread almost goes through 2 rounds of, carb or calorie torching, I guess we could call it, because if we have it in the freezer, that's going to cause retrogradation. Then, assuming you want to toast that bread, the toasting also can reduce some of the absorbable calories as well.
So cool.
I know, anytime you process food in any way, whether it's cooking, you are going to just be changing its molecular structure in certain small little ways that, make a difference, but for how we are able to actually absorb or harvest calories from that food.
Yeah.
It's very, very cool.
It's really cool. I can nerd out on this stuff.
Yeah.
I love this.
Yeah.
These are the hacks that I feel we need to share more instead of wake up at 4 and don't eat all day.
Just eat leftovers.
Just eat leftovers. This is great. Oh my God. I
know. That's what fried rice, think about all the
and the crispy rice thing right now. I'm loving that.
Love it.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh, and if you want to, if you like these crazy, mind-blowing, truths, on that same kind of idea of retrogradation and feeding the gut bacteria, there's this really cool concept. It's not a concept now, we know from data that the guts of folks in larger bodies are going to look different than those of smaller bodies. So we know that the gut microbiome does play a role in our weight management, and part of that has to do with how calories get absorbed. So we know that, for example, foods that are more highly processed, so if you want to talk chips, crackers, cookies, whatever, there's not fiber in that, right? There's nothing much for the bacteria to want to eat.
Okay.
So it gets gobbled up, it gets digested and absorbed very quickly and efficiently in the upper GI tract. So nothing really for our gut microbes to eat.
Yeah.
But then high fiber foods, because they're slow digesting, because they take more work, they go to the large intestine, and then our gut microbes essentially steal some of the calories from us.
Interesting.
So what's actually happening, it's super cool. There was this one study that showed that they had one group on a high fiber diet, and they lost, in air quotes, lost 220 calories or so in their poop. That's how they were measuring it. Every single bite they measured in, all the poop they measured out.
Yeah.
So they lost about 200 calories from what they ate. They didn't absorb about 200 calories from what they ate. But the highly processed foods group, they only lost half of that.
Wow.
And some people in the high fiber group lost 400 calories, which basically was just a matter of is how healthy and vibrant and diverse was your microbiome.
Wow.
So what we know from this all is that again, 100 calories from an apple is not necessarily going to be the same as 100 calories from cookies.
Yeah.
Because that apple, because it's got the fiber, might actually only have 90 calories of absorbable calories for us.
Yes.
And then the other thing is that 100 calories to you might not be 100 calories to me based on, who has the more vibrant, diverse microbiome. Because the more bacteria we have, the more bacteria to gobble up those calories. It's like a tug of war. We don't want to win this one.
Yeah.
I'm competitive. We don't want to win this.
This is not the
this is not the fight you want to win. Yeah. So it's, again, we can really geek out on all the cool little nitty-gritty details, but the kind of recommendations are the same. Just eat more fiber, lean proteins, healthy whole food fats, It's pretty simple. And don't do anything extreme because it's always going to backfire.
That's such great advice, and just I could talk to you all day, but a great balanced way to end the conversation, and just a good reminder that like our bodies are really fucking cool.
Oh, yeah.
And the science behind them are so cool. And I love how you share all of this. So please tell everybody where they can find you, follow you, and get more of your amazing content and information.
Yeah, thank you. So at Abbey's Kitchen is basically like where I'm on all social media platforms, on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram. And then my podcast is Bite Back with Abbey Sharp. And you can get that anywhere you get your podcasts.
Thank you so much, Abbey. I love talking to you. This has been just such a delight.
Thank you.